Hello and welcome to the conversation. Welcome to Honest Faith Conversations. As always, I am Miguel Covarrubias.
And I'm Kathy Covarrubias, and today we'll be talking about Star Wars, but we're going to focus today on Rogue One because we just got back from watching it, and it is amazing.
Yes, so it is very fresh in our minds, and we're going to be bringing up a lot of these topics throughout. So, major spoiler warning. If you have not seen Rogue One, or if you have not yet seen any Star Wars movie, go and watch them. You know who you are. You need to go watch them. Especially if you're one of those people who feel like, I don't need to watch Star Wars. It's kind of on the bandwagon. No. You need to watch Star Wars.
Yes. Jump on the bandwagon.
It is one of the artifacts of our culture. So, we're going to get into that here in a little bit. With that being said, let's jump into faith in the entire Star Wars universe as a whole. Last week, we talked a little bit about this YouTube channel called Wisecrack. I highly recommend that you guys go out and check them out. They are a great YouTube channel. They aren't paying me to do this. They don't have no idea that I exist.
But let them know that you heard about them from us if you do happen to go that way.
Yes, and so he has a wonderful video about the philosophy of Darth Vader. He has a lot of videos about philosophy of. They also have this fantastic series called Thug Notes. It's the kind of the spark notes for very popular literature, and they're actually quite funny. Anyway, he talks a lot about this idea of the fear of death, which is very pervasive in the entire Star Wars universe, especially with Anakin.
Yes.
Of course, when I say Anakin, I'm referring to the first three prequels, since Rogue One is a prequel.
Yes.
But the first three prequels that the quality of them are not very good.
But that's another discussion for another day. And if you've watched the movies, you kind of probably agree with us. Anyway.
And I think the fear of death is very, very much kind of what the entire Star Wars universe is all about.
Yeah.
There is, in all of the characters, they kind of go through this whole, whether they're afraid of death for themselves or afraid of death for their loved ones or anything else like this. And it plays very heavily into Anakin. And this is why he
it's the driving force.
Yeah, the driving force for him into the dark side of the Force. It's he's afraid of his mother's death, and it's kind of hits you over the head with it over in the first three prequels. Mm-hmm. I think George Lucas lost a lot of his subtlety. Well, then again, he was also working with two actors who really couldn't portray very subtle characterizations.
It's fine. Let's move on.
And that's my own opinion, and maybe I should have saved that for the controversial issues section. But the Star Wars universe takes a lot of influence from Eastern religions, from Buddhism and Christianity especially, which is kind of funny because there's a lot of that in sci-fi fiction. Mm-hmm. You look at things like The Matrix. The Matrix pulls heavily from Buddhism and Christianity, especially in the extended universe. If you ever watched the cartoon series, the Into the Matrix, I think it is.
And then also like in, you see it in Harry Potter as well too. Harry dies and then comes back. Like, where did we see that from? The Bible, maybe? I don't know. Who then, we can go into a discussion as to what other influences that, but anyway.
Well, the symbology is very heavy there. And in fact, there is one of the things that I call back on, primarily because we just saw Rogue One, is Donnie Yen's character, Chirrut Imwe.
Chirrut?
I have no idea if we're pronouncing that correctly or not.
We're terrible at names. If you guys haven't figured that out by now, but hopefully you guys can follow along with who we're talking about.
But anyway, he has this formulaic mantra prayer throughout the entire thing that I am one with the Force and the Force is with me, and
no, it's the Force is with me and I'm one with the Force.
It's still
So
formulaic prayer.
Yeah.
It's either way, it's the same thing.
Yeah, that's true.
It's very in line with a lot of Eastern religions and with their formulaic mantric prayers. Like, for instance, with Eastern Orthodox Christianity, there's the Jesus prayer, which is, Jesus Christ, Son of God, have mercy on me, a sinner. Which has its origins in Egypt, and a lot of kind of the Eastern Orthodox and Eastern Catholic faiths really take that on as one of their primary prayers. But you see a lot of the Eastern influences throughout the entire Star Wars universe. I mean, the entire concept of the Force is kind of a very both Buddhist and very Christianic roots within that. You can see that.
Yeah, you could kind of equate the Force to like the Holy Spirit in the Christian religion,
or just God
or
as
just
a whole.
That is true. Yeah.
Well, with that being said, let's jump right into Rogue One then. So, what were your thoughts about the movie?
I liked it. I did not see a lot of that coming. I was very, very good and avoided a lot of spoilers, which hopefully you listeners are also avoiding. So if you've gotten this far, I don't know why you're still with us. But anyway, I don't know. It felt like a Star Wars movie for adults. It's obviously. I mean, it's not like like. It's just a little bit heavier. It's not as lighthearted. There's not as much comedic jokes in there as the other movies. What do you think?
I really liked it. And, of course, we just got back from it, and we haven't had a whole lot of time to let it settle. But I would rank it up higher than Return of the Jedi for me. Of course, though that's up higher than the other prequels. But the director was very good about not hitting you over the head with the cameos and with the callbacks and with the Easter eggs and all that other stuff. They were subtle.
They were like it sometimes I can't remember what they had said, but somebody was just having like a light conversation, just kind of in passing, like it just brought something up, and I was like, oh, okay, yeah.
And for those of you who didn't catch it, the blue milk was in there, so it was almost right away, and I was like, ha ha. And I'm sure people were around looking at me, kind of like, why is he laughing? And I do that a lot in movies. But I really enjoyed it. I really enjoyed the gravity that it had. It kind of almost had the gravitas that some of the earlier films did, when you didn't know what was going to happen to the characters, when you felt for the characters and stuff like this. And here's the biggest spoiler alert warning for the entire show here, but in the end, every single character that you care about has died.
Yes, like I was not expecting that. Like when after the first one, after the second one, I was like, okay, and then all of a sudden, you see the two main characters. You see Jen and Cassian just sitting on the beach, and like the flames are coming towards them. They're rolling towards them. And you're like, is somebody going to swoop in and save them? Like, what's, like, hello? And I also want to bring up, like, I felt like a sense of urgency, like, the whole entire time. Even though I know how it ends. I know they get the plans because Princess Leia has them when we first meet her. But So I know how it's going to end, but I didn't at the same time. And so I still, like, my pulse was still up, like, near the end, wondering if they were going to make it out or not.
Well, and I think that the director did a very good job of making this his Star Wars movie. You can see a lot of his influence were from big theatrical or big. Well, yeah, I can say theatrical because it's not just movies, but also theater influences. I mean, think about plays where everyone is dead in the end, is like Hamlet and stuff like that.
Yeah.
Callbacks to Shakespeare, who has, a lot of these things where death is a very big part of it. And as we said in the beginning, that it's the fear of death that's kind of pervasive to the entire Star Wars universe. And here in this, I mean, not only are some of the characters, willingly running towards death, but they're also embracing death.
Yeah.
And especially at that moment at the end there with the two main, with Cassian and Jyn, that they're not even running. They're just sitting there and watching this explosion coming towards them. That it's kind of like death is coming, death is here, and it makes for a beautiful moment. And I think that. This can go into the controversial issues section later, but I think that's something that the Christian church, I think, is very sorely lacking.
Yeah.
I had a conversation with a friend recently, is that the Christian church, we are a religion that celebrates resurrection, but we don't allow things to die for them to be resurrected.
Yeah. And
so I think that's very within the Star Wars universe, this is something that we can bring back from this is this fear of death can kind of eat away at people, eat away at things, at institutions and stuff like that. But something else I want to touch on in this is something the director did, and I think that it's not just here with this movie, but with a lot of modern movies, is that in modern cinema and the artifacts of our culture now, is that we've kind of ended our obsession with individualism. Is that we are no longer relying on a single solitary savior or messiah figure to come and save us. It's a group, or it's that they realize that they can't do things alone, that they do it together. Yeah. And I think this Star Wars movie kind of strays from the other ones. In that is that it's not just Jyn or Cassian or any of the other ones that are going to be the saviors of this movie. It's kind of a group effort. Yeah, because in order for their plan to be successful, everybody has their part, and everybody had to complete their mission in order for the overall mission to actually come to fruition. Right? There was also, I applaud the cast diversity in this. The casting director did a fantastic job. Yeah, there's a little sprinkling of everything here and there. Yeah, there was. I was surprised. I was actually really surprised at the cast diversity. That even the white guys, they're not. They're not too white. They're not too white. They're obviously foreign or white. Like non-American guys. White? Is that what you mean? Non-American white guys, yeah. So, this was... I really enjoyed this, and I think that just kind of the overview of this whole thing, it was a good movie. So, let's kind of move on to the faith in Star Wars, the religious systems. Yeah. Well, I would say that there's really just... like the overall big umbrella that we see of the Force. Whether it be the light side or the dark side, it's just the Force. Yeah, it's the dominant religion in that universe. That galaxy, since it is a galaxy far, far away. Yeah. So, that the religious systems in there are, the biggest one is the Force. And I'm sure they didn't really delve into a lot of that in the films. I'm sure they do in the books, but I haven't gotten into a whole lot of the extended universe books. I do know a few extended universe stories that have since been uncanonized. We had our own kind of Ignatian reformation in in Star Wars lore with the new movie with Force Awakens, and I think we can only really touch on the Force because that's what we know, and those are the systems that we kind of we're familiar with.
Yeah, and that we know a lot about.
Exactly. So to begin with, we do know of we kind of have those messianic, symbolic figures in the original Star Wars movies when we had this obsession with individualism in our society.
Yeah, we were focused very much on Luke.
Yeah, Luke as the savior, and even though Han Solo did help him out from time to time, but, he was still kind of the savior of the universe or the galaxy. Whereas before that, it's all reliant on Anakin, and with the whole prophecy thing, and we were kind of hit over the head with that with that whole thing at the beginning here, and I'm a big fan of one of the original extended universe stories about Luke. Is that after the major war with the Empire, is that Luke kind of restarts the Jedi Order, and in that Luke kind of has this idea that there really isn't a light side or a dark side. There just is the Force. That the Force goes where it will. It's not really black and white like that. And I think I really like that. I really like the gray area because in this, I think that both the Jedi and the Sith it can be argued that both of them are bad guys in these films.
Yeah, like even with the light side of the Force, I mean, you are still like the Jedis and the people who are strong with the Force are still taught like, okay, you have this great power. However, you have to make sure that you don't fall in love with anybody. You can't have a family. Like, these are things that, like, innate, like, this is, like, something that us as human beings, like, strive to achieve in our life. And yet, the light side of the Force is like, no. Even though that's a good thing to have, you can't have that.
Well, it says that passion is not a thing. That's for the Sith. The Sith are all about passion and ruling with passion and ruling with your strong emotions with like anger and love and all this other stuff. And I mean, with the stories of Darth Plagueis, with that very beginning, that love was kind of what ruled Darth Plagueis, and that was his passion. And a lot of these things kind of, they're very much ingrained in their morality systems. You can see the morality system within the Jedi being, they see it as very black and white, and the Sith see it as very black and white.
Yep.
It's either you do it our way or you don't do it at all, kind of thing. And I think that it can be argued that both sides kind of get that wrong in a way. I mean, we see that all the time with our churches, and that's why we have so many schisms throughout our denominations within the Christian church, especially. Because there are these small little things that we kind of throw out there as saying, either you do it our way or you don't do it at all.
Yeah.
And then, we kick people out or they leave because they don't like the way of doing it and whatever. I mean, that's why a lot of people don't like the Episcopal Church, because the Episcopal Church kept saying, things like, let's ordain women, or let's ordain gay people, and, let's ordain, everybody. And it was kind of like this whole thing, they're like, you can't do that. And we're like, why not?
Yeah. Because that's how it's always been, by golly.
And I can tell you more and more these schisms are just, they're over these little things. And I think that you see this a lot in the Star Wars universe. And You see, what's funny is that the prophecy, and this is has redeemed a little bit of the Star Wars prequels for me, is that you see this that Anakin, Darth Vader, does bring balance to the Force because the Jedi Order had taken over and there were like no Sith anymore.
Yeah.
And so it was bringing the Sith back. There's that's an imbalance if you ask me. If you have one order that's kind of ruled over everything. So
well, and that honestly I don't know what the Jedi were thinking. Like they knew. I mean, that they knew of the prophecy. They're like, yes, this kid's going to bring balance to the Force. Like, what did they think that was going to mean? Like, they've always known there's been two sides of the Force, a light and a dark. So if they are the light and they're the ruling force, like, I mean, how they had to have changed somehow. I mean, of course, Anakin didn't have to murder all the kids, but
yeah,
I mean. You see what I'm talking about? Do you see what I mean?
Yeah, but he was highly influenced by the fear of death thing, and that's he was going to do whatever it took to be a Sith, and
to try to protect Padme.
Yeah, and Darth, what's the Emperor's Darth name? I can't remember at the moment.
Palpatine?
Sidious, Darth Sidious.
Oh yeah, sorry.
He just he took advantage of that, and he manipulated him. And even though, all right, we'll call back to Rogue One here. Is that even though in Rogue One you see that that Darth Vader is now on his own kind of thing. He's not right there with Darth Sidious. He's kind of I didn't even see if there was a title card for the planet that he's on, but he's kind of off by himself, and. You see that he's kind of come to terms with himself in a way, and this is right before A New Hope, and you see that what's kind of his driving force now is to kind of rule the galaxy now. He's lost everything, and he has nothing left to lose, kind of thing.
So he's just kind of rolling with the tide. He's like, okay.
But that's what makes him dangerous. And
yeah.
I mean, you see, there's the last time you see Darth Vader in this movie. I mean, he is terrifying. In this movie, it brings back Darth Vader's terrifying nature.
Yeah.
I mean, he's no longer the puppet of Darth Sidious. He is more that baddie that is, kind of sends chills through your spine, this kind of thing. And I mean, there at the very end, you see him emerging from darkness, and this symbology is huge. I think for it kind of made you forget all about that whole no segment. Is that he's emerging from the darkness, and his lightsaber extends, and he starts slaughtering rebels left and right, and it's just
that second there before, I mean, because there's a moment that it is just darkness and it's just silent, and you're like, okay. And then as soon as he unleashes his lightsaber, you're like, oh, fuck. Oh, sorry. I didn't mean to curse. Sorry, I have a potty mouth, listeners. I apologize if children are listening. Please don't hate me.
So, a lot of this stems from the Eastern religion things, and you can see this throughout all of these things within the Jedi and within the Sith, and I mean the whole idea of the yin and the yang comes from those Eastern religions. And like I said before, is that George Lucas kind of took his influence from Akira Kurosawa, and with being Hidden Fortress, basically in space, that you have this whole kind of concept from Shintoism and from these other things that you kind of need that balance of both light and dark, and that's why I appreciate the extra canonical story of Luke's Jedi Order there. And you also have beings called the Dark Jedi and other things.
Yeah, but
like
we
this.
won't go into that.
Yeah, well, with if you're going into a whole D&D scale of things where they're more of the chaotic, lawful chaotic, or I guess you would say more probably neutral beings, and I think that's kind of where it brings balance into more of a instead of being evil, it's more of a neutral kind of thing.
And can I bring up the fact that during Rogue One, hope was said probably about like 30 times, and like obvious, like, yeah, we're just waiting for some hope, like all you need is a little bit of hope.
And it's kind of the call to New Hope, because Rogue One takes place right, like almost immediately before A New Hope.
Yeah.
Like you can watch them in a row, and it would make a whole lot of sense as a single, sitting, as a single story, kind of thing. But without the whole idea of the individualistic Messiah figure, was that you have this whole crew that kind of made this thing happen. Mm-hmm. And hope is a big thing in this movie. And I hope we touched a little bit on this in our first episode with talking about faith and talking about that faith is the evidence of things hoped for. And I think that there's a quote, and I'm not quite sure where he pulls it from. Another YouTube personality, John Green, says that hope is a thing with feathers. I have to look up that quote now. But I think that hope is a very beautiful thing, and one of the biggest lines throughout the movie that is kind of restated is that hope is something that rebellions are built on. And I think that's really essential to this movie and to the entire Star Wars universe. It's from an Emily Dickinson poem. Okay, hope is the thing with feathers that perches in the soul. That's one of those things that I think that is very true, and I think that's one of the reasons why it is important to talk about faith in these things, because, like I said, faith is the evidence of things hoped for. Is that those are the things that we draw upon. That like the quote is that that's what rebellion is built on. That's what almost anything is kind of built on. It's built on hope. It's built on that idea that things can be better, or that things will be better, or our idea of better. Because granted, there are rebellions that are hopeful for other things, but
when I think that you can't really have like faith without some hope in there. You know what I mean? Because you need to have a little bit of both in order to kind of drive you into trying to see things through.
Yeah. Well, that concludes the regular section. Now we jump into our controversial issues section.
Even though we kind of have controversial issues throughout our whole segments, these are a little bit more, I don't know, blood boiling for some people.
Yeah. One of the big things that I think about this is that I like to imagine God like the Force. Is that, and this is a controversial issue, is that there was a few years ago that we were having a conversation about God in youth group, and one of my youth group students had said, well, what if we are all just manifestations of God's imagination? What if we were all just kind of figments of God's imagination? That God is all things. God just isn't just in all things, but is all things. And that, it's still rattling around in my brain, because that's still an idea that I can't get rid of, because it's a really beautiful thought for me. It's really something that I like to think is reality. Because if we are all have God in all of us, so that God is in us and through us and around us, and as Obi-Wan is explaining the Force in A New Hope, is if it's that way, then God is everywhere you look. God is in the person next to you. God is in the computer. God is the computer. That we should respect these things because they are manifestations of God,
and the Force does the same thing. I mean,
exactly.
I mean, they say that the Force is in every single thing. Only some people utilize it more, or for some reason have more midichlorians, whatever. But anyway,
because that's a thing. But yeah, and I think that's why I really loved Donnie Yen's character's prayer, is that I am one with the Force, and the Force is with me. Mm-hmm. The Force is with me, and I am one with the Force. Is that that idea that God is with me, and that I am one with God, and that God is with me, and that is a very both Buddhist and Christian idea, is that God is in all things, and we should respect all things. Therefore, that's why we should respect our environment. Why we should respect all life. That all life is sacred. We kind of touched on this a little bit with Morgan and with Aikido. Is that's one of the things, is that all life is sacred, and that this is. I don't know why this is a controversial issue, but it's a controversial issue because we have a lot of people don't like to think of that, because they don't like to think that, they like to think that God is elsewhere, that God is absent.
Yep. That
God has not, invaded our society, that we are doing our own thing, that we are not tied to fate.
Well, and I think it's harder if you, like for me personally, like feeling that the Force or God is in everything and everyone, like that's why when people like ask me, like if somebody were, like if an intruder were to come into the house, like would I shoot them dead? And I say no. Like, even if they meant to, like, harm us, I would not shoot them dead. I would defend myself, yes, but there's other ways to defend myself besides killing him. Because if I kill him, I feel like I kill a little bit of the Holy Spirit when I do that.
Well, not only that, it's more or less that fear of death thing. It's really bringing it, that kind of full circle into that idea there, is that, as these characters who are not afraid of death, that kind of go charging towards death, you see in them something that draws you, that something that you're not, that somebody else's life is not more important than their own, and that it's also not less important than their own. Well, except for stormtroopers, but the whole big thing
they
about
actually
clones.
Shoot things,
yes,
and they do. They don't just miss now.
Yeah. I think after this whole thing is when they started to realize, oh, the rebellion is actually doing some good things. And, yeah.
I'll just miss.
Just miss. Yeah. So.
Oh, I would also like to bring up part of the controversial issues. So, as you're talking about, how the rebels gathered around and kind of came to the conclusion that this was basically going to be a suicide mission. There's a point when the Rebel Council vetoed the plan. They were like, nope, we're not going to do this. It's too dangerous. It's going to start a war. We can't do this. It's just too risky. And then Jyn comes out and she's just like they said no. Like, I can't believe it. They said no. What are we going to do? Like, this has to be done. Like, something bad is going to happen unless we do something, and nobody's believing me. So then, unknowns to her, like, Cassian has, like, gathered up all of his friends who also kind of align with them and, like, believe her and believe that this mission is important. And all these people, he said, have some kind of thing in their past that they have done that they regret, but they did it for the rebels. Mm-hmm. So we're not entirely sure what they did, but there's just...
Well, it brings up that, they have spied and they have thieved and assassinated and, all these other things that he brings up.
And the thing that kind of gave me like a kind of a, took me out of the moment, they pan the crowd, they pan the group of people that are there, and they're all men. Every single one of them. There is not one woman fighter in there. And I'm just like, really? Really? Like, I don't care. Like, I understand that, the leader of them is a woman. Or, well, she's not even the leader. She's more like kind of like the co-person. But, yeah, I was a little disappointed in that.
Well, there are only like 2 women in the whole of the original trilogy.
I know.
Star Wars.
I know. And I thought we were doing so good, especially with episode 7 coming out, and another woman lead, and you're like, yes, and then it just I don't know. Maybe it's just because spoiler alert, am a feminist, but like it's still not equal. Like, yes, like Hollywood is trying. I get it, but they can do better.
Yeah, I agree. They can do better, but at least they did pretty well with casting a diverse ethnicity.
Yeah,
there was only one alien in that crowd too, though. So there's they didn't cast a whole lot of races either. So.
But even with that though, like I don't know, like.
Well, that brings us into the next big thing, which I thought was just completely ridiculous. Was that before this movie came out, I'm not sure if you were aware or not, but there was this whole big thing about boycott Star Wars because there was one of these fake news stories that got out that that they had reshot scenes to be anti-Trump, and I thought that was completely ridiculous because it's set in a galaxy far, far away. I mean, a long time ago. They have no idea what in the world Trump is, and so a lot of these things. If you have something that is going against your ideals, then it shouldn't shake you so much that you want to completely boycott it. It should make you want to question your ideals and say, okay, what is it about this that people are finding appealing? Or let's have a conversation about that. Let's talk about what it is that we find that other people don't find good. And I think that would negate the entire Star Wars story to begin with if the Jedi and the Sith had just sat down and been like, okay, let's talk this out. Let's figure out why your ideals are different than my ideals.
Yeah.
And let's figure this out. So, there was, we'll probably have to do an episode on Doctor Who next.
Yeah.
But there's a scene from Doctor Who in this last season that I just absolutely, absolutely adore. That, Peter Capaldi, it was fantastic in. And,
even though we know that not a lot of people like him, or there's people out there who don't like him, but anyway, we like him.
That'll be in the controversial issues segment of that one, but, that he's kind of talking about this whole idea of war when he's saying what you're going to have to do is what you had to do in the very beginning was just sit down and talk, and that's kind of been my mantra since that came out is just sit down and talk, and I think that's really kind of our biggest conflicts in all of life is that we don't sit down and talk to each other, and that's the whole crux of this idea of getting rid of individualism is that we're kind of getting rid of that idea of getting rid of that concept that I can do this on my own. I can do this on my ideals are the best ideals.
Especially here in the United States, like we're very like pull yourself up by your bootstraps, like you should be defending yourself. And but now with the culture of what's going on right now, there's been kind of this shift that even the people who were individualists are now gathering together. So now they're no longer individualists because now they like got each other for it. I don't know. Like it's all kind of backwards. But anyway.
Well, and I think that the funny thing about this whole boycott Star Wars thing is it's not new.
No.
I mean, it happened with Force Awakens in that because people saw Finn, who is African American, as a stormtrooper, and
they flipped their lids.
Oh, I know.
Like people were like, what?
And they saw Rey as a woman,
Yeah.
as a lead, and that was, just, kind of, you can't do that.
Mm-hmm.
So
Yeah, like how can she win? How can she be a good fighter and a good warrior? Well,
yeah, well, and I think that this whole conversation is a much larger conversation. We just barely scratched the surface on a lot of these things.
yeah, but we can talk about Force Awakens in another one too, so we
Yeah.
can go a little bit more into that anyway.
But with that being said, that's why we're kind of asking you listeners to join our conversation, because we want you guys to let us know what you want us to talk
Yeah,
about.
please email us. We have a Twitter. Like, go ahead. Like, there's, if you want to make a video and email it to us too, like, I don't care.
I'm actually working on something now too. Is in the next episode, I'm going to have a Google Voice number that you can call in at and leave a voicemail for us, and we might even play it on the show to for you to have a conversation with us. Actually,
Oh, yeah, write us in and maybe we'll read it out loud.
exactly. And so anyway, join the conversation by looking us up on Facebook. That is Real Honest Faith. On Twitter with Real Honest Faith. And our email, which is honestfaithconvos@gmail.com. And so with that all being said, may the Force be with you as you join the conversation.